Testing. Testing. 1, 2, 3. Hi. Welcome to Digital Drawing Live. This session is officially going to start at 6 o'clock. And between now and then, what I'll be doing is I will just be on here to answer questions. And I'll do this most weeks. What I'll try to do is I'll get on about half hour before the 6 o'clock session, so that if anybody has any questions, they can ask. And then we can just have a chat. That was interesting. So I'm learning this new system that we're using. So there's those, and then I have this one that says we're starting at 6 o'clock, and we are going to be doing a drawing today. In just a minute, I'll find it for you on my tablet, and then I'll give you a gander at it when I turn this screen around, so you're not looking at me all the time. So, which is not a good plan. I need my phone because I'll use my phone in order to be able to follow some of the chatter if there is any, or to also to see the picture that I want to draw. And so I have to find the picture on my phone. And today we're using a app called Autodesk Sketchbook. And you can get that on most tablets or on your phone. I have a couple of students that were here in the last couple of weeks who work on their phone, which I don't understand. I have to wear glasses even to look on this big iPad Pro that I have, and with the 12-inch iPad Pro. And so the nice thing about working digitally, that it's probably the best method for old people to draw, because no matter how bad your eyes get, you can always zoom in and work on the details when you zoom in. So the picture that we drew last week turned out very nicely for the people that were here. We worked on it very quickly, and it was the bird, the angry bird is what I call it. So we're back to a landscape today, and we're going to do the landscape, and I can show you what it looks like. Just give me 2 seconds here. I'll go on to the fine arts. Let's see if we can share my screen on this. So the application window, your entire screen. Let's share the entire screen and see what happens. So I'm going to share the entire screen. And, well, there's not going to be any audio on it. So let's just share the entire screen and see how that works. It'd be so cool if I could go back into this tablet and then share the screen so that you see what I'm doing on this tablet. Let me just think about this for a minute and see if I can work it out. So sorry if you're following along here, or if there's anybody actually on watching. All I'm trying to do is I'm trying to figure out the best way for me to do this sharing back and forth. And so at the moment I'm going to share my screen, but the screen it's sharing is exactly what you're seeing now. So I'm going to go into a different lineup here, and I'm going to go to my fine arts link. So actually, I'm not even going to log on. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to search for Darren Cannell. So this is where I store my digital art for people to purchase it in all different formats if they want. And so you can see the way it came up. And so this was the drawing that we did. This one was the drawing that we did on our first week. And it was a lot of fun to do with the kids. And so what it did is that we started it and spent 2 hours doing it, and then we spent another whole pile of time afterwards. I did anyways on my own and tried to work that out. And that's what I ended up with. So in the end. So these are some other paintings of mine, but I'm going to go down and just try and find the landscape that we're going to work on today. And so this is it right here, the forest stream print. And so we're going to try to create that today. And so that's an exciting little thing that we're going to work on. So I hope you enjoy it, and we'll see what we can do. This will all start at 6 o'clock. And so until then, I'm just going to be playing with some of my settings to see if I can possibly get this to show up on there. I could probably do it with a Bluetooth, but I don't think that'll keep up fast enough. So I want to try a few different things here and see if I can make it work. No, I don't want to do that. Cancel that. So I'm now back to me talking. So now you just have to look at me for a second here. And I'll stop sharing my screen because it's just me talking. Okay, so according to our clock, we have about 35 minutes. And so I'm going to just play for a little while and change some settings here and see what I can do. This is I'm working on a Pixel Chromebook. And so if possible, what I want to try to do is use the HDMI into this Pixel. I don't know if I can do that. All I can do is try, right? And if I can make that work, then I should be able to. I should be able to run a very interesting. So if it comes out of here, the power cord might work actually. The power cord goes into there. No, it's the Google app, the Google end to the Google end. So I don't think that'll work. No biggie. Close all. So I'm just going to put us on hold here for a second, and we'll come back in a little while. Because I don't know what I'm doing at the moment. So I have to figure out how I can make this work. And I don't know if I can, so. So, do you want to see a neat graphic? Let's just see what we can do here. Let's do an scroll down. Overlay chat. It's kind of weird. So I got the rounded theme on there, which is kind of cool. Overlay chat I can put on there. Default graphics, avatar placement holders, participant names, logo, and overlay. Ooh, videos. Here, let's go for the backgrounds. See what we can do for some cool backgrounds here while we're waiting. Show that. Come to me. I don't see any background happening. What the heck is going on, Henry? Oh, so I have to turn off my screen, which you guys will probably like. So just let me turn off my camera. Disable the camera. I'm just back. I've finished playing with the settings, and I can't do much of anything at the moment. So we have to wear a mask because of the room we're in and because of the way this is set up. So the setup is quite simply my tablet where I draw. Then I have my Chromebook, which records a screen because it's easier than trying to record your tablet. And then I also have it projected up on the wall. So the students that are in the face-to-face, like come here, then what we'll do is we'll just work through the drawing step by step in order to create it. And we'll be using a program called Sketchbook Pro. So it's a great little program. It's the one that I used to draw with. Procreate works just as well. And so they're both similar products, and they allow you to create different images. So just in the last little while, mine is starting to be a little finicky when it comes to starting up. So this was a drawing that I was doing before. So we'll just save that, save a copy of that. And then we're going to just start a new one. So the new sketch that we're going to do, we're finally going to do one that is on its side. And so we're just going to create a blank screen. And so this will be the one that we're going to work with. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the screen around so you can see the way the setup will be. And then you'll be able to follow along step by step. So I'm going to try and set that up now. So So now the interesting thing here that I want to try is I want to try to see if this is streaming through YouTube. So I'm going to do the streaming of the streaming. See what that looks like. So I'm just going to go to YouTube Studio. So live videos. And then this one's live. So if I play this, are we going to see the live video streaming through live video? What happens when you get all the way down to the end? Does that just catch up? Or does it actually end? Heh. Don't know how that works. Okay. So let's get back into the drawing. So this is the program that I use. It's called Sketchbook Pro. And I'm just going to double check and make sure the settings are correct before any of the students get here. And then we can just try to follow along. There, that's pretty clean. And I'm going to change the setting here. the caption. See if that'll work. Let's go to, oh yeah, slick. So now we've got it set so that when the students get here, we can just start the drawing process. So as we're waiting, I can start introducing you a little bit to the Sketchbook Pro app. I'm going to go back out of here just so that you can see the way it starts up. So let's just shut it down completely. So I'm taking these out of here. Okay, so then I'm nice and clean, and then I want to start up my Sketchbook Pro. And so starts up their Sketchbook. It's Autodesk Sketchbook, and this is what it looks like, and this is the new drawing that we're going to do. And so to expand and contract things, you can do it just by using your fingers. Like squeeze it, and then it will actually pull it back together again. And we'll start our session in about 8 minutes. And so I'm just going to give you a big welcome to. I'm going to turn the settings way up on this. So let's go way up here and let's go. Welcome to drawing digitally. And we're very excited, and hopefully you get a chance to learn something here about the drawings that we're going to be doing. So today we're working on a drawing that I call the magical forest. And so it's a very abstract kind of forest, but it's a kind of cool effect when you're finished it. So, and it's not difficult to do. It's a fairly basic drawing. It's not one of the more advanced ones. And so this is our 4th lesson, I do believe. And so I'm going to try and keep it fairly simple and give us our magic forest with a river running through the front of it. And so we're going to try and include some different smudge techniques in there, because for those of you that have been following along up to this point, I use the smudge tool a lot. I find it to be very powerful and very useful. And so I'll be using that to create some of the effects in this magic forest that we're doing today. And we will be starting in a few minutes here. We've got about 6 more minutes before we start. So it's called the Forest Stream. And I'll show it to, I'm going to put it up on the screen just so you can see it. And so I'm going to put it down as one of the apps I have here. I don't think I have one. So what I'll do, I'll get back to it in a second here. So just give me a second. I want to send this to send it to D Cal 5. No, just the viewer. I love technology. We got 4 minutes before we start. So now what I did is I just sent that message to myself. The drawing to myself, which I find is easier than to get it on my tablet. It's just the way it works. So I'm going to unplug this for a second here. So there's my river. So I'm going to download that. Image saved. So let's exit out of here. Let's get out of here. Let's go down into. We'll come back up here live in a second here. So here comes a signal, and this is the drawing that we're going to work on today. So it's fairly brilliant with lots of interesting details on it. So it's the one that we're going to work on. And so I hope you enjoy it. And let's see how much we can create what we've got there. And so we'll start in about 3 more minutes. And hopefully we'll have some face-to-face students here, but they always tend to end up showing up at the very last minute. So hopefully they'll get here in time so that they can create with us from the start, rather than getting in here and then trying to catch up. So I'm just going to go down front to see if there's anybody there and then bring them up. And so just bear with us. We'll probably start in 3 minutes or so, or 4 minutes. So you can see where I put that in there, and then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull in that drawing that we're going to do right here. And then let's just squeeze this down. Welcome to Drawing Digitally. This is the painting that we are going to do today. Then you go done, and then what I do is I move it into the back. So let's just do it again. So I'm going to go in there and make it a little larger so it fits on the screen like this. And then I'm going to go done, and then I'm going to put it behind the Welcome to Drawing Digitally. So that'll be our drawing that we do today. So stick around and we'll get started soon. I'll go see if there's anybody here.
Is anybody else down there?
Not yet.
Come on. Social media person, right? Oh, that's not ready. Missed you last week.
Yeah.
Anywhere you want to set up is fine. I'm just going to draw from this end today. Thanks to anybody who's waiting online. Appreciate it. We'll be starting right away. The drawing that we are going to do, this is the one that we're going to try to create today. So it's nice and bright. And so we're going to try and create that. Does that show any one of you guys on there?
I'm trying to see.
No. Oh, your head came in there. That's okay. No, stay there. I just have to set this up so it doesn't show anybody. So I don't want you guys to be beamed all around the world.
Yeah, I don't really want to be on either.
Okay. There, I got just a screen on there now. All right. You guys ready? Ready to go? Plug in. There should be one right there at the front. If you go to the front, there's nope. At the front, there's an extension cord. Do you see the extension cord down there on the ground? Right there. This one.
Turn off.
Okay, it'll come back on. It's picky every time you touch it, it quits, right? Like you did last week all the time. So it's coming back up again or not? There we go. Technical difficulties. All right. Quite simply, this is a fantasy kind of scene. It's just a stream and a happy forest with bright colors. And so we're just going to play a lot. We're not going to create obviously exactly what we've got here, but we're just going to work along that idea. And so that light still not coming on yet? Oh yeah, it's coming up now. It'll just take a second. So what we, with the way the setup I have here, just if you're online and you're waiting, what I have is I have my iPad hooked into a monitor, which is then being recorded on my Pixel book, which is the one that you're seeing. And then I also project it up with a projector up one of the walls. So, hi, welcome. And so we disconnected the projector by accident. So all we're going to do is, you need a space there? Are you okay? Okay. We're going to take this one off and we're going to start with our blank screen. So you guys, the first thing that we want to do is we want to make a little bit of a background in it, and we want the background to be blue. And so we're going to work from the farthest away to the closest for this drawing, and which is exactly the format and the method you should be using when you're creating a picture. And so we're going to start with a white background, and we're not going to change the white background. You notice how on the first one and on the second one we changed the color a little bit. So on this one we're not going to. This one we're going to work on blue. And so I'm just going to take this tool. You can see the settings. It's a flow airbrush. which is the one I use a lot of. And then the size is going to be 10.2, and I'm going to work at 60%, but I'm going to put the size way up. So I'm going to put the size up at around 80 or 96 or so, so way up high. And then I'm going to put the opacity up as well, and so make it even. So it's 70% and about 96% on the top, the size. And it's just so that I can cover in an area really fast. And then let's go down to the color I want. Color is where I'm going to work with a blue, a fairly brilliant blue. So it's going to be kind of like that shade in the blue area. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put this at the very top and at the back. So the layer I'm going to work on a separate layer. From what you can see there, you see how I've got the original painting just sitting off to the side there. You guys won't have that. You'll just have the one layer. And I'll just use that one that's on there every so often. I'll put it up there just so that we can see what we're working towards, okay? And so the blue, we just want to fill in the background here. About 1/3 of the way down, we're going to put blue. And again, because it's the sky, it doesn't have to be a uniform blue. You can have some of the white showing through. It's just going to look like clouds, and we end up covering most of it up anyways. So nice and fast, we have our sky in the background. And you can see how some of the white is showing through. That just gives it a little bit of a cloud effect, which is kind of nice. And just for interest's sake, let's just put a little bit of a cloud in there. So we're going to go to a little bit lighter of a blue, almost a white. And we're just going to put a little bit of that on there just to actually create a little bit of a cloud in the background. It's going to end up covered up over anyways, but you can see how I just created, just very quickly sprayed on a little bit of stuff to put in a little bit of a cloud. And then we are going to use all sorts of special effects today, all the sorts of special different brushes. And so you can see where I'm looking now. I'm going to go down into here, and we're going to work with this brush set texture. We're going to try it, see what if we like it. If we don't, then we're going to go looking for a different one. But that's the one we're going to start with. So you see which one I'm under? I'm under textures, and it's called the charcoal one. The one beside it is kind of interesting too because it's camo. And then you have this one here, which is thorny, which is a good one for the bushes. And then you have another one over here, which is the HR brush texture. And so we're going to start off with a charcoal one just to see what it looks like. And we're going to put it as the bright yellow in our painting. And so if you want to see where I'm looking, I'll go back there. So this is the painting that we're going to try to achieve, you guys. And so you can see all the yellow in the background. So now we're going to do a band of yellow across the top, and then we're going to put orange over top of it. So that's what it's going to look like. So we're going to take that off of there, and we want to go to the yellow. So let's go into this area here for the yellow. We're going brilliant colors here because we want it to be kind of like a fantasy world kind of place. And once we have that bright yellow, we're going to put it on the, let's put another layer on there so it's on top of the blue. So you see how I have the band of blue, and then I have another layer on top of that, and then I'm going to work on that layer on top, and that's where I'm going to put the yellow. And so all I'm going to do is just sort of move the yellow around here just to fill up some of the areas. And then as I'm looking at it, I say, okay, that's too small. So I want to push my settings really high. So I push the settings in around 268 and see what that does. Do you see how that comes in now as a speckle? I like that a little bit better. And so that's my layer of yellow. And that wasn't too hard. So now we have the layer of yellow. Do you want to see my settings again? Charcoal, size 226, opacity 100%. So this is a pretty traditional drawing. Well, not traditional, it's kind of a fantasy looking thing, but you can see how we're putting all this stuff together. And we're just going to start blending more and more colors in there to give it a little bit more interest. So in the very back, we want a little bit of purple, and we want a little bit of orange right up by the blue. So you see the purple looks like it's the farthest away. The yellow is going to look the closest. And then the orange is going to be in between the purple and the yellow. And so we're just going to add another layer And we're going to put that, because we said the yellow is in the very front, we're going to put it below the yellow. And that one we're going to do in orange first. So the orange, I'm just going to move my color over to the orange. So you see how I pushed it over? And then I put these colors, but these ones back on so you can see them. And let's just put some orange in here. So the yellow, because it's in the foreground, is going to overpower the orange. And so I'm going to find that I want the orange to be overlapping some of the yellow. And so I will probably go to the yellow layer as well and put some in there just so it doesn't have just the yellow showing through. So you see how I was working on the yellow layer, and I've got the look when it looks like that then. And then in the very back, I'm going to put purple. So I'm going to merge these two simply because I know that they can go together. So the yellow and the orange, I'm going to merge those two layers together, and I'm going to work my purple right over top of that. So I want to go into the purple, and I want it to be a fairly dark purple. So like that color, approximately. And we're just going to put some of that right around the edges. Simple, starting to get trees. So this is what we're trying for, you guys. So then we're going to start working in some reds below that. Some reds and some pinks and a little bit of a green. So on the same layer as the yellow, we're going to put in some reds. We're going to use the same tool. The tool seems to be working fairly well for us because we're going to end up smudging it anyways after. So we're going to use just some red. So we're just going to put in some reds in here. And then in the very middle, we went with some pink colors in here. And that'll start to give you the trees will start to be created. Hello. And so that's going to be your pink area. And then we're going to add the green. So the green is just going to go in there and it's going to be, oh, sorry, I want it on this layer. So we're just going to put a little bit of green in there just so that there's no doubt that this is actually trees. So what we're doing is we're laying down the color, and then we're going to come in later and turn it into trees by pulling and using that smudge tool again to create that effect. So I want a little bit more green in this one, so I'm going to put it like that. All I did was quickly pull it across. And I want some darker purples. So now this is where there's no right and there's no wrong. Like I want some darker purples down around the bottom. And I think I'll go to a little bit more reds. So here's some darker reds. Again, just giving it a little bit more interest so it catches your eyes. You don't want any one color. Like you see how the yellow in the background is almost taking over the whole background. So you want to break that up simply by putting some different colors over top of it. And then the next strip, we're not going to do right away because the next strip goes over top of this area once you smudge it out. And so now we're going to go to a smudging tool. Is everybody fairly close to where I'm at, where you have all this stuff all smudged in there? So now we're going to go up and we're going to get our smudge tool. Now the smudge tool that I always used in the past, remember the smudge round bristle brush? And the flow, you're going to move up fairly high. You're going to move it about halfway. The strength, you're going to move about halfway. So it's going to be fairly strong. And you want to put the size down to begin with, just so that we can control it. And then what you're going to do is you're going to create some trees. So if you take a look at the original drawing, just see how this one doesn't have a lot of trees in the background. So one of the things I didn't like, the white trees we're going to put in afterwards, but it doesn't have, like, it just looks like a whole pile of bushes in the back. It doesn't have a lot of little trees and branches in the background. Well, we're going to change it in this one. This one's going to be better than the original. So then what we're going to do is we're going to do some smudging in this area just to pull branches up in the background. And so you can see how this will start to pull the trees up, and it's not strong enough. So I'm going to push the flow and the strength way up again, because it didn't really create the pulling effect that I wanted. So that's a little bit better. You can see how that starts to pull a little bit. So you see how I'm starting to create, I created a tree right there in the middle of the picture. We're going to create those all over the place. We're going to pull this stuff and create a real dense forest. Happy forest, because there's lots of bright colors. But we're going to pull all these colors up, pull it up. And we're just going to create, using the same width, we're just going to create trees all the way across fairly quickly. And again, there's no right or wrong when it comes to these things. And so then we're going to increase the size a little bit and create the trees that will be closer. So those little ones that we put in the background will be way in the background. And then the bigger one, you can see how these bigger ones will start to be in the foreground. It'll come up a little bit closer to you. And remember, it pulls the last paint that you touched. And so some of these are pretty heavy, and I'm not too sure I like them that heavy. So I may go back and go undo, because I don't like how heavy they are. So you see how heavy those are in there? I really don't like them, so I'm going to take off the heaviness, and then I'm going to take the size of the tree down a little bit, because it's too big. 15's too big for me. So I'm going to put it down to 8, about half size. And then I'm just a little bit bigger than the ones we originally started with. And you want to pull these up into the sky a little bit as well. So pull some of the branches up to the sky, just the odd one. You don't want to be totally uniform. And add some extra branches in there. So we have a little bit of a neat background for trees. Okay, so you can see how I drew all these little branches on there. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go back to the original charcoal one, but we're going to find one that is not, the charcoal not as heavy, or we're going to tune it down. So we're going to go to this one that's called Thorny, and we're going to move that one up and see what it looks like when we put it on. Okay, so the color, let's see what it looks like first. So this is what the Thorny looks like. You see how I put it down in the foreground? So the Thorny is a little bit smaller and not quite as heavy. So then let's see if we can crank it way up and see how it looks when it's heavy. So then you see how this looks right in the foreground? That's too big. So I'm going to take all of that off because I don't like it. And I'm going to go down to about that size. And let's see what Thorny looks like there. So that's kind of nice. And we're going to do it with some bright yellow at the very top to bring out the branches on the, like, there's nice to have all these branches, but you should have some leaves on them. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go with some really bright colors and go yellow. So I'm going to go in here to a greeny yellow. So right there. So I'll leave it up there for a second so you guys can see it. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put some of this right over top of some of the branches. So you can see it says branches just over top of some of the trees. Move it down a little bit. And then I'm going to go darker. I want some of this darker green in there. Again, just to show some different variations. So all you're doing now is just adding a little bit more depth to the forest by adding a little bit of this texture over top of some of the other colors and covering it in a little bit. So it gives it a really cool little effect. Then I'm going to go really purple, but very dark purple, because I kind of like the way that looks in the dark in the background. And then what I'm looking for is a break in the branches. So you see this part on the right hand side. I'll just circle it here. This area right here. That's what I'm going to build in. I'm going to put some darker colors in there to make it it look like it has a shadow in it and gives it some depth. So you see how I just darkened up that one corner? And so I'm going to do that in some of these areas where the yellow is showing up. So it just gives it okay, there's a real dark bush there, and then it has some leaves growing up in front of it. And I want to go in here and I want to work with this one now. We haven't tried this HR brush. See, that one's kind of cool, but I want it to be bigger. So let's see what it looks like when I crank it way up. Yuck. Looks like cat hair. Too high. Back down. Opacity way up. So that's kind of cool too. Okay. So I'm going to use that to put some red and some pink in here. So again, we're just duplicating the stuff that we did at the very beginning, but we're just trying to bring up a little bit more of the details. So do you see how I just put some red across that middle section? And then I'm going to go to the pink. Put some pink into the areas. Just because we like it and it makes it happy. Then I'm going to move down into the, I'm not even sure what this is, what color this is. It's kind of a darky purple. Not as dark as the other one, but again, it's just an interesting color. And then once we built it up like that, then we go back in there and start on the smudge again and pull some of the smudge up. So now that you have some new trees that are pulling some of the colors, some of these new colors to again create some interest. So start in one of the brighter colors that's in the foreground. So I like this purple that's showing up, and then I'm going to pull that. And then the pink, I want a pink tree going right up the middle, and I want some of this yellow to create a yellow tree. So I'm pulling some of the yellow. So you just find some spots where the different colors are showing up. We can put a good red tree in there because there's some nice red in the foregrounds. You can pull those. You can pull some purple up. Pull some more pink down. And again, it's starting to look like trees. These pictures are so much fun to do because they're really not that difficult, and they're just more like playing and fun. And so you just pull and draw and pull and draw and pull and draw. And so we're just sort of trying to create the feeling of a deep forest. Mine's looking more like a flower garden at the moment. But that's okay, because we're going to put big trees over top of it, big white trees. Okay, so then remember this trick. We've got it. We go to this setting and you go duplicate. And you go duplicate again. And you see how much that filled in with a duplicate. And then you can start pulling again. And you'll end up with some bolder colors because now you have some bolder colors that showed up. And again, it's just pulling the drawing, pulling the stuff up. Everybody caught up with me so far? Now we're going to put those three layers together. So you go merge, merge. And this is the way you do your white trees. So remember what I said, when you smudge, if you pull from the white area, you're going to end up with white trees. So that's why we haven't put that white, let's go back to the original painting, sorry. Just see in this original painting, you have those white trees that are coming up. So we're going to pull the white trees, and then we're going to put that layer of bushes right in front of the white trees. So the first layer that we've got now, this layer is just the background. And then we're going to pull white trees in front of that. And then right down here in this bottom part, we're going to end up putting in the yellow little bushes in front. And so, time to put in some white trees. Here's what you do. Watch the settings because this will help you. 9.4. Pull the layers, pull the flow and the strength down a little bit. And then we're going to try one just to see how wide it is. So do you see how that white pulled up is not heavy enough? It'll be okay for something, but it's not heavy enough for what we want to do. So we want to go up a little bit stronger than that. So I'll go up to about a 16 or so and see if that's a little bit heavier. So now that's nice. That's a good heavy white start. So do you see how that started to pull up? The white pulled up, and then it started to pick up some of the other colors. So all you want to do is keep pulling that white up so that you end up with a very white tree coming up through it. So do you see my white tree that I threw in there? And you see how it picks up some of the color from around it as you pull it? And then we're going to put another one right here. And again, you're going to pull the color and keep pulling the white up in strokes. Like it won't go in a single stroke. You're going to have to keep moving, pulling and pushing the white up to create the tree. But it also will give you that broken branch kind of look to it, which is kind of cool. And so you can see how I'm pulling that color and just keep pulling it so I end up with a nice, powerful tree, which is white in the front. So you can see the way those two trees look. They're pretty cool. And it gives you that kind of a neat feeling. And so you're going to create a band of these across your picture. Keep pulling the white up through the darker colors. And remember the undo brush. So if you ever do anything that you really hate, then you can go back and just undo it. Take it off. No one says you have to just keep with what you got. Okay, so I put probably 7 different trees across there, and I'm going to go in here and change the level of the size of it because I want to go with some smaller white trees now. So now I'm going to go down to about the 9 something, but I'm going to push the flow way up. I'm going to push the flow up to 100%. And so what it'll do is it'll put the tree, and it'll be easier to pull it and give you that nice thin tree that I just put in there. So that's the 3rd tree from the right I just put in there, and it's very thin. And so I'm going to add some branches to the end of the big trees that I've got in here by pulling them out and just give them a little bit more of a forest feeling and less of all the branches being exactly the same size. And you do that just by continually pulling up some different branches. And we're going to end up with birch bark trees, or some white tree in this fantasy world. Where unicorns live and other such things. So again, all I'm doing is pulling up some thinner little trees. Again, you can see how it's starting to layer, how you have the yellow trees. See how far back the yellow trees look now? They're way back in the background. And so my original garden that I had there that looked more like a flower garden than it did trees has now sunk back and has become a tree, has become trees and bushes off in the background. Remember the rule that when things are closer, brighter colors, more distinct details. And that's why our white trees, we're spending a little bit more time giving the white trees a little bit more texture to them.
Can I go on a quick break?
Yes, you may. So what I'm doing here is I'm pulling sideways. So you see that one tree right next to the middle? This one, right? Just a minute, let me get a different color here. So this tree right here, I'm trying to make it look a little bit more birch barky. So I pulled some color from the side, so it's not just a white streak that goes up. And so as I'm going across it, like this is another one, like the biggest tree to the left-hand side of the picture, you can see where I'm going to start to pull some of this color in just to break up that tree. So it's not just a solid yellow, or sorry, off-white gray color kind of color. I want it to look more like a birch bark tree. So I'm trying to pull some of this color in just to break up the tree a little bit and make it look a little bit more birch barky. And again, the nice thing here is that you can't do anything wrong on this picture because it's just a whole pile of bushy trees. And then once we have all that done, then we're going to put some stuff in front of it. So we want to, let's go back to the original painting and you can see. So you notice how these trees have some stuff over top of them. And you see how big and bold these trees are? We're going to have to put 2 or 3 big bold ones in the painting that we're doing. Because at the moment we've got all these small little ones. I think we need some bigger ones to make it stand out a little bit more because these are all one certain size. So let's go back to the smudge tool and let's push it way up and we'll make a couple of big trees. Now this, I don't like my right side as much as I like my left side of my picture. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a big tree coming right through here. And I'm just going to slowly but surely go down in size. Well, that's a big tree. So that looks like a tree that belongs in the jungle. Well, not in the jungle, but someplace like that. And I'm going to pull in from the side just to make it look a little less like it's made out of concrete and it's more of a tree. To pull some of the color from surrounding it to give it a little bit more interest. So now that's a cool tree and brings a lot of interest to that one side, which was boring before. And so using a light touch, I'm putting in some smaller branches coming off that big one. And then I'll probably put one more big one right through this area right here in the middle of the picture. So I like that tree, but I don't like these ones. So I'm going to put it right over top of these ones. Give me some more white. Thank you. The nice thing about the white is it's just so bold that it stands out with that dark background. So it's a nice contrast. And again, I'm just creating a little bit of an interesting tree. No, I don't like that branch all the way up top. So do you see this right above that last tree I did? There's a branch that's coming up and it's yellow and blue and goes right through the sky. It almost looks like a bolt of lightning. To take that off, I'm just using my smudge tool, and rather than using erase, I just take the smudge and pull the blue right over top of it, and then I get rid of it because I didn't like it. And then I'll pull the white one back up. I don't like that one either, so I'll just undo that and try it again. It's too thick. Stop it. And so this is what we mean when we say there's really no mistakes, because as I went, like I just took my tool really down to very narrow and very small smudge, and now I'm just pulling some more interesting branches off of those big white ones and some of the other ones. And so this is just continually putting some more layers on top of it. And then we're going to come back in and put some layers over top of these trees as well, because they're too bold. So we go back into the library, go all the way down here to, I think we'll use the charcoal again, but I think I'm going to move the charcoal way down, like in size, because it was too big. Put it down to about that size. And I want to just put a little bit of stuff over top of these trees. So I just put some purple over top of the right hand big white tree, and then I'm going to put some purple over the left hand one. And then put some red in there as well. Again, just picking up some of the color from the background, just to show some of those colors are being picked up by that white tree, so the white trees aren't standing out so much. And we'll put a little bit of yellow in there as well. In here. And again, it's just to make it, some of this stuff to sink off into the background a little bit. So you can see how the color sort of sank some of this stuff back and didn't took it out of the foreground. Then just for interest's sake, duplicate it, see what it looks like. I don't like it when I duplicated it. So here it is with not duplicated. Cut that out. So there it is without duplicated, there it is with duplicated, and the duplicated sort of took away the emphasis on the trees, so I don't like that, so I'm not going to duplicate it. I'm just going to leave it like that. And that's very nice. Okay, so now later on you can go in here and you can use your smudge tool again and add a few more branches in places where you think it needs it, and to finish off some of the endings. So what I mean by finishing off the endings, if you zoom in here, like take a look at where I'm zooming in here. Just see these branches? They look like they've been cut off. So what you want to do is you just want to take this stuff and bring it down into a little bit more of a finished end. So they're not so cut off. And so you can even put your size a little smaller than that and then pull it until you have a nice ending to your branch rather than that chopped off, got hit by a chainsaw kind of look. And then later on when you go home tonight, if you want to continue to make it better, you can see what I'm doing here. You see how I zoomed in? I want to make this part look a little bit more interesting by adding a whole pile of little branches. So you see how off this part I've got a little branch coming out, and I just start to continually add a little bit of a breakout from that, and it just makes the branches a little bit more interesting to look at if you ever zoom in on your painting. And it will also take off some of those dead ends. So you see how I'm working that one area? Well, you just keep zooming into different areas of this picture and finish off some of these branches. So they're a little less all one size. And so you can see how the trees there look a little bit more like a Disneyland kind of branches. And so the same with these ones down here where they're all the same size. I'm just taking off some branches so they look a little bit more like little trees in the forest. And zoom back in, and you can see you can go back in and finish that stuff after. That's the homework stuff if you want to continually make this picture better. Okay, so how are we doing? We're all right? Most people caught up? We move on to the next layer. This is just like any of the other pictures that we did where you can spend hours and hours working on just one section of it. And so the little branches that I was talking about, when you zoom into all these different areas, that areas I just zoomed into, like let's zoom into this one. It's the same thing. Like you see how you can add little branches onto the end of all of these little trees so they don't look like they've been cut off, and it gives it a little bit more of a realistic kind of look. Well, it's never going to be realistic with these colors, but you know what I mean. Well, it gives it a little bit more of a forest look. And that's the no mind kind of drawing that you can do. You don't really have to concentrate on it. All you're trying to do is make some little branches that are coming off this big white tree. So the big white tree is not just these big solid chunky trees. They have some of these little branches that are coming off. And then you can pull some of the gray ones the same way. You can pull some of the green ones the same way. So you can start to give it a little bit more of effect. But you can see that tree, even with what I did there, makes it look a lot better. So then we're going back out. And now we're going to put on the layer of yellow in front. So that we're going to work on this layer here that is just before the water. So in order to do that, we want it to go a little bit up higher, so we're going to work with that charcoal tool again. So you go down to textures again, pick the charcoal tool, and we're going to go to about a size of, how big is that? That's a good size. So 45. And we start with a green. It's going to be a greeny yellow by the time we're done. And so the color, we're going to push a little bit more over here to the green side, because again, this is closer to you. So the colors are going to be more brilliant. And then we're just going to put a layer of this straight across. And so you can see how this green layer works all the way across the page. And then we're going to go a darker green to give it a little bit more of a base. So a darker green. And again, all I'm doing is using that same charcoal setting with textures all the way across. A little bit more of a army green, little green army men color. And then I'm going to go yellow on top of that. And yellow, I'm going to work my way over to the orangey yellow, just to create this bush in the front. And then the bush we're going to pull as well. So then you don't have to be totally exact in your drawing or anything like that. We're just trying to put something here in the foreground before we put our water in. Keep moving across. We're going to put some orange in there as well, in some different spots. We're going to put some red in there. So we're going to try and get closer to the green now. Let's put some darker greens in there. And again, it's almost like a snake running across the front of your page. You don't want any one side to be higher than the other. You'd like it to be fairly level, because again, you want the water to be in motion and not the bushes. So then once I've got my layer of color on like that, then I come in with my smudge tool again. And now I'm going to pull all across this stuff in the foreground. So let me just zoom in and so you can see what I'm doing. So you're in here and all I'm doing is pulling this up. So you see how I'm just creating this as a bush in the very front, simply by pulling all the colors. And if you want to make that a little bit easier to do, go a little bit bigger and then you can see it a lot easier. And all you're doing is trying to create a little bit of a messy foreground. I'm going to go really bold on either side when it comes to the size of the branches. And the closer you get to the middle, the more refined my bushes are going to be. So I'm going to go down a little bit in size to about a 4, and now I'm going to work the 4s in there. And again, it's just creating this weird texture across the front. Done very quickly. And then I'm going to go even slight thinner than that and then pull it up into the trees. So now we have these little branches that are sticking out the top. So let me zoom right in here so you can see the way they look. So you see how thin those are? They're way too thin. I'm down at a 2, I think. I want to go up a little higher than that. That's too big. That's too big. I want it to be about a 4, I think. 4.3. That's a little better. They're still a little heavy. Let's go down a little bit more. 3, 3.2. Yeah, and then we just pull those up. And you can see how we're starting to have our bush in the foreground. And you see how I left some of the white showing through at the bottom and around the trees? It seems like it just makes it look like there's either some leaves there or something of interest just above this grass that we have in there. And so what I'm trying to do is just pull the grass in all different directions, because again, it's because it's beside the river. So there's no problems with it growing, but it grows in all different directions. And you want to pull all the different colors up, the darker ones up through the lighter ones, and then some of the lighter ones pulling up into the dark and behind that. And voila, we have a beautiful forest. Run, forest, run. Caught up on that? We'll take a little bit of a break here, you guys. Just keep drawing. I'm just going to take a break from pushing you forward so quickly, so you can slow it down and fix some of the things you want to do. So I don't like how the yellow is looking in the background here, so I'm going to use a little bit lighter, and I'm going to try and break up that solid line that I have back there. So what I'm doing is I'm just pulling some of this yellow that is showing through the very back and trying to show that there's some tree branches growing up out of that. So it's not just a line, it's more like a little bit of a forest back there. But I didn't like how uniform across the yellow looked. And so if you don't know what I'm talking about when it comes to that, you can see I'm going to work on the very right-hand corner. I'm just going to pull that up a little bit and make it into a little bit less of almost a wall, it looked like. So pull some of these dark things over top of it just to make it a little bit more interesting. And so I'm just going to keep drawing this particular flow across it, fixing my yellow. Let my yellow. First thing we drew didn't turn out very well. Then zoom in, zoom in, so we got the whole thing. Okay, I'm going to duplicate this layer and I'm going to turn it over so it becomes the reflections in the water. So I take that layer, duplicate it, then I hit that little 4 square up at the very top. You see the 4 directions? The fourth one over at the top. It gives me this, and then I'm going to flip it over, and then I'm going to move it down so it sits on top of the water like that. And that's going to become our water at the very bottom. So you want me to go through those steps again? So I'm going to go done and I'll stop, I'll redo it. So if you guys want to see how I did it. So the first thing I did is duplicate the layer. So that's this layer over here. So now I have 2 of the same things. Then I take the one on the very top and I go up to the very top of that northwest, east, south symbol right next to the bucket of paint at the very top on the toolbar. And I click on that and it gives me the ability to transform the layer. And so then what I do is you have the fourth one over allows you to flip horizontally. So I flip that horizontally and then I just pull that down. So it's at the bottom of my picture. And then it just shows a reflection, and you can see how I got it. So it's the grass is showing there, the trees are showing through. You want to try and get rid of the white on the side. You want it to fit so it's in the right spot. So you see the big white layer I have on the right hand side there. You don't want to do that. You want to be able to move it around so it sits in the right spot and doesn't have white on either side. So it'll take a little while just to balance it out. Move it around. Get it on there. So there it is. And then I go done. And then I'm going to turn the opacity down of that layer. So do you see the layer? That's a layer that's been flipped upside down now. I'm going to go in there and turn the opacity down. So do you see how it's turned out lighter than the stuff above because it's a reflection. So you don't want it to be super bright. I might even want to go farther than that down. So maybe like that. So now it looks like it already looks like water, even though you haven't even done anything to it yet. And on that, we are then going to spray on a real light wash. So you go to the spray, the flow airbrush, and you go to the blue, this color right here. And we're going to spray that right over top to create the feeling of water. So you want to go into your spray brush and you want to go the size really big and the opacity down low. And then we're going to build up a layer of blue over top of what we have. So you can see I'm starting in the bottom left-hand corner and I'll start to build that up. And it will wash out some of the layer that you have. And you can darken it up a little bit in the corners and in some of the areas. So the blue starts to show through. So you can see how now it's turned into a bluey water now. And if I want to darken that up, turn the opacity up a little bit and see if I like that. And then I'm going to put a layer on over top of it. Darker blue and darker blue over top of it. And then you can see how that's now starting to look like this water that's washing by. And I'm going to take my smudge tool, turn my flow down a little bit, and I'm going to smudge out some of this stuff in the water. And again, this isn't going to be apparent right away. It's going to take a little bit of work to work it out. But what it does is it pulls lines across your water. So do you see how that starts to look like there's water running over all this stuff? So the blue sits over top of it, and I'm working on the layer underneath the blue in order to wash it out a little bit. So zooming in, you can here, let me zoom in. Zooming in so you can see, I'll do it on the left corner here. So you can pull the left corner across and you can see how some of the things start to wash out and it looks like water. Okay, here's an important step. So watch this one. I'm working with my pencil, and I'm working with a really light blue. So you can see where the layer I've got. That's going to be the layer that you're going to put between the grass and the water. And it'll also be a few streaks that you put across it. So once you've got that color, this is what you want to do with it. So you want to go straight across your water, right across here. And it doesn't have to be a straight line. It just has to go across. And then what that does is it gives you that little layer in between that we're then going to touch up with white. And I put a few other those blue streaks across the water in the bottom. And then you want to go almost into the total white. And then the white has to go on the edges of that. Not all the way across. It's not one straight line. It's just sort of giving you some emphasis. And then right behind that, you're going to put a dirty brown layer, which again will divide things up. So you see where I'm putting the dirty brown now in behind that blue. And then that gives you your division between the two. Go into the white, just pure white, and put some white streaks across the water, especially the areas that aren't very interesting, like the way I washed out my grass. You see how my grass washed out and took all the color out of it? So then I want to put some white on top of that just to show that it's water that's in front. And then that layer, you can turn up the opacity now, and you can see how it looks much better. And you can decide how dark you want the blue to be over top of it. Then I'm also going to add a little bit of using the pencil, because then you're not pulling something. I'm going to actually draw on some white lines that will be little, very thin trees coming up through the grass and into the background. So I'll put one right over here on the left-hand side, and you can see where it just comes up, and it's just using the pencil. It gives you another method of putting on a very clean tree just coming up out of the grass a little bit. And the same thing with the grass in the foreground. I really don't like the grass in the foreground too much. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and put some green, some strands of green right across it, some darker greens, because it's very light. And I'm just going to put some grass to make it a little bit more grassy. So you can see where I'm starting to pull in some of the grass in the front across the yellow in order to create a grass effect. And again, it'll make it look a little bit more glassy in the foreground. And then I'm going to move over to a tool that we have used just a couple of times, and this is the spray glow brush. If you've never used it before, you want to put it on white. And then just use it to put a few streaks across the water, because it'll come up with a purer white than anything else, the glow white for some reason. And then you can put the odd branch that'll stand out really bright using that glow brush, airbrush. Now you can put some of these layers together. Once you've got it so you kind of like it, just put your layers together, merge them down. So I'm going to just merge them together, merge them together. merge it together. So you can see how quickly that came together, but now we want to make it sparkle. So to sparkle, what we're going to do is we're going to put some little light flashes on it. And so it looks like little fairies in the grass or whatever. And so you go here and you're going down to look for that little star. That's this one right here. It's called the sparkle. And we're going to work on pure white. So you want to go as far white so you want to make sure that those things at the bottom are as far to one side or the other. So it's nice, pure white. And then we're going to put some sparkles in there. So do you see the one I just put on? It's so big and it's so bright that it took over and I don't want it to. But it may look good up here in amongst the trees. Could we have that as the sun? Yeah, we could. So let's see if that's what we want to do. Put it on there and see if that's a good place for the sun to be. It's kind of nice. I kind of like it. So I want to put that way down low, and then I want that sun, that light, excuse me, to be created in different areas. So now we're going to create some sparkles on the water. And you can see how these are just little sparkles here and there, and you don't want them all to be the same size. So once you get a couple of them on there, change the size of your sparkle, make it a little bit bigger. And then put the white sparkles right over top of some of the areas and make it stand out a little bit. Little sparkles. The white that we had left behind before had already created some of that sparkle, but now you're going to put some more sparkle over top of it. And now that I've got my sparkle on there, and I actually have a sun in the middle of it, I'm not too sure I like the sun, but we'll leave it on there for now. And then I'm going to go down and start doing the finer details on it, the stuff that you have to fix. So I'm going to use a smudge tool at a very low level, and I'm going to zoom into an area like that, and then I'm going to fix it. Because you can see the way it looks. It looks very broken up and ugly. And so now I'm going to pull this so it becomes a nice forest rather than a forest that was hacked up by a guy with a hacksaw. And smudge all this stuff together to make it look a little bit more like a forest and make some very distinct trees. So like this white line that goes through the middle of it, I don't like it. So I'm going to break up that white line. And then I'm just going to do this on every single, I'm just going to keep moving around the page and just keep fixing up the different areas. So even in that short little period of time that I spent on that this little square has made this thing look better. I don't like that really white line going through there, so I'm going to smudge that tree out a little bit. I think I need a better name than what I called this. I can't remember what I called it. I think I called it River Sparkle or something like that. Gotta fix that. So then you just keep zooming in on the different areas and just highlighting and fixing some of the trees so they look a little bit more like trees and a little bit more interesting to look at. And so now I did that top corner, so now I'm going to work down here. So if you take a look at this compared to the piece I was just looking at, this is really, if it was by itself, you'd have problems telling what it is. So now I'm going to turn it in to a tree. So if someone actually looked at it, they go, oh, that's a tree. Rather than, what's that white hydro line doing through the middle of it? It's because I drew it with a pencil. It was a bad plan. So do you want to show me what you got so far? Can I see? Just turn it towards me so I just can see it, and then I'll ask to see each one. Yeah, it's coming along. You went straight across with like that arc with the water. Anytime you want motion, if you put an angle, the moment it got around to the side, then that shows motion, right? If you keep it level, then it ends up not so, it just gives you more of a calming effect to it. Can I see yours? It's nice, zoom in a little bit so I can see. So you got your water's lower on the left-hand side than it is on the right. So you want to pull the water up just a little bit on the one side, right? So it's it's level. Otherwise, it looks like it's flowing off the edge of the page. What I mean by that is when someone looks at it, if they see the water and it goes like this, that means that's exactly where their eye will go. It'll go into the middle of your picture, whatever your focal point is, and then it'll go off the edge. So if you can bring up that one side a little bit, then it will level the picture out and make it a calmer picture to look at. Can I see? Nice. You can pull the trees up a little higher into the orange, right? Can I see yours?
I think I drew too many trees together.
No. You just have to pull in some of the other colors, like some of the background colors into it. So the more little, like, do you see how I'm just fooling around on this section here? I'm just going to spend the rest of the class just doing this stuff. Just to, when I looked at this, it looked very chunky. And now what it does is it looks a little bit more like a briar patch, where you might find a rabbit, Peter Rabbit. And so that does is it just creates a little bit more interest. When you zoom out on it, you won't see it won't be one of those things that you go, oh, that makes such a huge difference to your picture. But what it does is when you zoom in, it makes that one area still an interesting painting by itself. So if I took this picture just like that and use that as my picture, would it stand by itself? And that's what you always want to try to achieve, is you want to be able to look at your picture and say, yes, no matter what you look at it or how much you zoom in on it, you should still have something of interest, and you should still be able to tell what it is. And so by making these more into a tree shape, that even if you zoomed in on this, it still will be a tree. And so that's your whole goal, is to fix some of this stuff. So it looks like a tree with branches and all that stuff coming off it, and not just a clump of color. By taking the colors and pulling them and making your branches a little bit more interesting to look at, and the grass flowing in front of it, then you can look at that and say, okay, now it looks like trees, where when I first zoomed in, it didn't. And then you go over to the next section, and you do the same thing in the next section. So this one here, same thing. You need to pull this out so it starts to look like a tree, and not just some big white blob. So the same thing here, where you have this purple. The purple, if you pull it out and pull the green into it, then you can have a little bit more of a tree effect to it.
Do they have like a vending machine in the building?
Yeah, halfway to the front they do.
Can I go buy something real quick?
Of course, yeah. So again, this is adding branches. I'm just going to keep building it up and trying to make it look a little bit more interesting to look at. So when I first started looking at this section, it didn't look like the trees, and now it's looking a little bit more like a bunch of bushes. And so again, I'm going to zoom in. I think, come on, be nice picture. I'm going to zoom in, and then I'm going to go over to the next section. So right in here, So you see how this doesn't look as much like the trees. It does over here. This section closer to the left I've already done, but I haven't done the section to the right. But you can see how this starts to look like a tree. And every single little branch that you pull off breaks up that flow and makes it look like a little bit more like a forest. And it's the reason why I use the smudge tool more than I use the pencil. The pencil gives you nice straight solid lines, and it's nice if you want to do a line drawing, one that would be done more in pen or just with a pencil. But the smudge tool allows you to pull color from all over the place, and it gives such a nice effect. And it always makes, it's a quick way to do a very interesting picture to look at compared to using just a pencil. If you tried to draw this with a pencil or the marker, you'd find this to be a very long, tedious operation to draw in all these lines, where a lot of this stuff just happens as you pull. And so you notice how this tree that I'm drawing at the top in the very middle, you have white at the bottom and then it goes to blue as you get closer to the blue sky. That's an effect that happens just by the smudge tool. That's nothing that I did specifically. It's just the way the smudge tool pulled the colors. And so the way it looks with the different layers is kind of cool. Now, once you have a painting like this, putting something hidden in the trees is always fun. So you can go back in and put in eyes or something in the background in the darker area. You could put a set of eyes and tell somebody it's a Sasquatch, or you can draw a unicorn's horn coming up from behind one of the trees. And hiding stuff like that in your pictures is sometimes always fun, just to give a little bit more interest to some of your paintings. And people will look at the picture a lot of time and not see it. And then if you point it out to them, they go, "Oh, that's so cool. I never saw that." And so that's kind of a fun thing to do with pictures like this, because it's obviously not on this planet. And the one that we did last week or the week before, I'll show you how that turned out by the time I was done. I spent lots and lots of time. I think I actually sent you a copy of that first one that I worked so much time, that we spent so much time on. And then the one we did last week with the bird. But that's a fun part of doing a picture like this, is that you can just play with it for a long period of time. So anytime you're bored, you just call this picture up again and continue to draw something new on it. And then it actually tends to get better looking the more you draw. So you have to make sure that you don't do too many sparkles. The sparkles will ruin it if you get too many on there. And so if you're putting on a little sparkle, and even the sun in the middle, I'm not too sure I like the sun, and I'm still not convinced, but it may be something that'll grow on me in time as I continue to look at it. Look at your picture upside down once in a while, because it'll also help a little bit. If you turn your picture upside down, you'll see, okay, that those trees are bugging me, or that sun's bugging me, or the water isn't level, or you want to try and make sure that happens. So I have a left-hand side of my picture, and my water starts to flow off, so I have to pull my water up a little bit. Which is a real easy thing to fix. I just have to pull that up a little bit. So it's this area right here. The water is swooping down, and so I have to pull that up. And so all I'm going to do is pull the dark up a little higher, pull the white over top of that, and then pull the blue over top of that, and then pull the reflection up over top of that, and then I've leveled out the water correctly. And that makes a huge difference. Thorny bushes. I've created a thorny bush. Not a forest you want to run through. Okay, so here's another transformation that you can do really quick. If you share your picture and you copy it, sorry, I don't like to do it that way. I'll do it this way. So if you share your picture and you mail it to yourself, so I'm going to mail this to myself, just because I want to try and get it in my photo gallery, and I'm not too sure how to do it on my tablet, because it keeps fighting me all the time. So this is just a drawing. So I'm going to send it to myself. So then what this will do is it'll go to my mail, and then I'm going to take it out of my mail and put it into my, maybe it will. Hello. It doesn't want to do it, so let me see what it did. What? Don't crash on me. Make sure you save your picture, you guys, just in case it crashes on you like I think mine just did. And it did it again. But it didn't lose it. Okay, so I still have it. So now it just said my picture came in. So I'm going to take my picture out of here. So there's my drawing. I'm going to take it from here, and I'm just going to download it into my camera roll. So if you can find another way to get it in your camera roll, that's great too. But then your camera roll, this is another thing you can play with. So this isn't it. So this is my latest drawing. In here, there's a whole pile of edits that will allow you to adjust your picture. The auto one is an automatic thing that will just change your picture. So you can see there was a slight change there, but I don't like using that one. What is cool is you can go to this one. Then you can decide, do you want to go to different feels for your picture. So here's dramatic warm, dramatic cool, black and white, silver tone, and all of those create a really neat picture. Like you can choose, like you can do 15 different pictures simply by allowing the computer to adjust the color of it. And so the vivid warm is kind of interesting to look at. There's just vivid in general, and there's the original. So that's the first one. The second one is you can go in here and you can change the different brilliances or the exposure or whatever you want to do on this to give it a different feeling. And so that's all done electronically by the computer. Some people say, oh, that's cheating, you didn't draw it that way. Well, yeah, but that's part of being able to do the digital drawing, is that you don't have to necessarily stick with your final version of it. You can go in and enhance it. So let me just talk about one of the ones that we did the other day, and let's go back to those, and I'll just show you. So you three missed the one we did the other day. So this was one I was playing with. So this is the one that we worked on the other day, and all we did is we started with outline, and then we worked into this. And so it was a quick drawing and very fast, and it's not a hard one to do, but it was just a matter of, again, pulling and doing exactly the same thing that you did with the bushes and all that other stuff. And that's online under digital drawing digitally. So if you want to try it, it's on there. The step-by-step, the 2-hour one, that's on there. Okay, and then let's go back to discard the changes on this one, discard the changes. And then this is the one that we did the week before. And you can see what stages we went through and how we were pulling it, and we were doing these mountains and all other stuff. And then what I did is I spent another 2 hours or so playing with the mountains to give them a spacey or a weird effect. And so all I did was pulled all the colors together, which gives it a really neat, cartoony kind of look to it. And so that you guys, when we got there, the couple stages, I don't know if I saved it in the different stages. Let me just see if I've got some other stages of it. Because remember when we were drawing it, we got, well, this is where we ended. Right here. This is where we got to. And then oh no, so you see I've already started on the grass, the rocks in the front. But this is where we were when we ended that class. And then I just went home and then just continually drew. So then continually, that was the layer that we finished at. And then I said, just go home and you can draw some details and pull some of the stuff to make it a little more interesting to look at. And so then that's where we got, I spent another 2 hours or so just putting some more details. So you can see how I started to do the rocks there and then started to work on the mountains and then work through the mountains to make the mountains a little bit more complex, and then ended up with this as our final copy. So let's go back to the gallery and go back to the painting we're doing today. So we're still working on the same sort of concept of the layers and just putting some more details in some of the branches and picking an area that bothers you on your picture. Like around my sun, still that I don't like the way it's working around my sun, so I would go in there and I'd fix that. So I'd look at it upside down. That'll tell you right away if there's something that bothers you, or on the side or something like that. And if there's something that bothers you, then you go in and you just continually work at that area till it doesn't bother you anymore. And then that allows you to create a picture that you'll be super happy with when you're done. Now, the question that you have to ask yourself is, on a picture like this, where's your focal point? And is there a focal point? And if there isn't, then you have to try and figure out what would be your focal point. Like, unfortunately, I think the sun became my focal point. And I'm not even sure I like the sun. But that's part of what, like, when you're drawing, that's part of what you're going to end up working your way through, is the things that you are trying to create. On here, if I put a bird right in the middle, right where the sun is, if I put a bird just below that in that red area, just drew in a bird of some sort, it doesn't even have to be a realistic bird or even a mini dragon or something like that. That would be enough to make this picture a little bit more interesting to look at. But again, you have to create it in the same style of this one. And that would be, you'd have to try and make it fit in there. This is our last class for March, I think, you guys. Then we have, no, this is the last class for February. Then we're into March. And I need some suggestions on what you would like to do as far as your next drawing, because I've been picking the ones up to this point just because I wanted to get to a certain stage, but we certainly can work on figures, we can work on humans, we can work on different animals, we can do space drawings, we can do cars, we can do whatever you want. And so if you have a topic that you'd like, or a content model of some sort you'd like to work on, or if you go through any of my pictures and say, geez, I'd like to try this, then we can actually work on those. Or you can bring in your picture and work on your own individual picture. And I'll just help you on the things that you're having problems with or what you're trying to create. Because a lot of times when you end up with pictures where someone else is picking the topic, it's kind of boring because you end up doing something that someone else likes and you may not even like it. And so I did bring my 2 books there. If you want to look through those, and if you see something in those you'd like to, like those 2 books sitting there, if there's something in there you'd like that style to work on, if you'd like to learn anime, we can do that as well. That one's always interesting to try and do your own Marvel character or Superman or something like that. The cover that I'm doing for this lady, for her book, I'm spending a lot of time working on fantasy type peoples with capes and swords and dragons and those type of things. And so that's kind of a neat challenge as well, is to pick a topic or pick a book that you really like and try to do a new cover for it. Music CD covers and stuff like that, I've done those as well, where you try and draw a picture based on what you think the music sounds like and what sort of genre it falls under. And so that's always a neat exercise. Perspective drawings is another one, where you're trying to draw a cityscape or something along that lines, or a 1-point perspective, a 2-point perspective is another thing that we can cover, just to make it a little bit more interesting. Because at the moment we've worked on 2 drawings, the landscapes have been layers, and there hasn't been any distance built into them or anything like that, so we can work on those. The human figure is always interesting to draw. The human face is always interesting to draw. It's a really challenge a lot of times. Eyeballs by themselves, just drawing an eyeball, we could spend 2 hours drawing an eyeball. And pick a different eyeball. Is it out of a, I don't know, out of a horse, or is it a lion's eyeball? Or is it a human eyeball? Like, people will spend hours doing that. Hands are a pain. If you've never drawn hands before, that's another one that if you need some help doing that, we can do a lesson where we just work on drawing a hand. Draw your own hand is always an interesting exercise. Different people, when they draw human faces, always make this mistake of putting the eyes too far up on the head. Your eyes are actually halfway through down your head, and the top half of your head there's nothing up there. And so people always put their eyes way up on their forehead, and that's a very common mistake. But there's a pile of little mistakes like that. Like, how big is a person's hand? Like, a hand is as big as a person's face normally. Yeah, so it covers your whole face. And people always draw these little things that are sticking off the end of their arms, and it doesn't look right. And then how far down your body does an arm go? If you draw it too short, you can't figure out why that picture bothers you, and it's normally something like that. The perspective is wrong. Drawing feet facing you is always a pain when you're drawing people. How do you draw a foot that faces you? How do you actually draw a foot, period? People who really spend a lot of time drawing humans talk a lot about the muscles and how the muscles work underneath. Awesome. So human figures and cartoon figures and stuff like that are always fun to draw, because they're very quick, and they're very cool. And the idea is that you have to try to create a scene that is of interest, and the picture should explain what the person is doing. And so that's always interesting, the way you draw them and what they do. The oval method of drawing of humans is always interesting, because a lot of people try to draw it based on, they'll look at another picture of a drawing, and then it limits your ability to be able to put a person in any shape or doing anything. And so you have to, if you work on ovals, which is a method that I teach people how to draw figures, it's like there's just a whole series of ovals. If you put all the ovals together, you can draw a person doing anything you want them to do. But again, that's a challenge, and that's something you have to work on. So, shadows, light sources is another one that we can talk a lot about in the next little while. Because a lot of times people draw two-dimensional objects. So the hard thing is to draw a three-dimensional object. You have to draw the light, and you have to figure out where the light source is, and then make sure the light source is there. And that's always of interest, is to be able to take someone's face and to hide it a little bit. And what do you actually have to put on a face to make it stand out? So I'll show you a concept that I did before. So I'll cancel that. I want to save a copy of this. come you're not being nice to me? Okay, so here's some examples of, this is the two-dimensional stuff. And when you're drawing figures and faces and stuff like that, the challenge a lot of times when you're drawing using doodles or doing very simple things is to try to incorporate things in it to grab the person's interest. So if you look at something like this, the man's face at the very top, that's a pretty boring picture. But it actually has some interest in it because I made him look a little bit more metal and I put some circles in there. But to draw the man's face like that, and I'll show you, let's go back to Weird and Wonderful here just a minute. So here's some other ideas when it comes to faces. So here's a face. Now the face by itself is pretty boring to look at. And so then the flowers over the top gave it a little bit more interest and catches someone's eye. So I had the picture with just the face and I didn't like it. And so then that's where I ended up. Here's one with less detail. So I drew a nose and lips. I messed up the eyes so bad when I originally started to draw it that I decided I wasn't going to do it. And so then I just put the hat or whatever you want to call it over the head over top. So then the same thing with this. Try to draw somebody's head down and still make them look correctly. Now the nice thing is that when I was drawing this, I wasn't trying to create a human. I was trying to create something else. And so then this is just the idea of putting a person in the background. Where's it going for now? Same idea. Here's when I talk about ovals. So this is just an oval drawing. And you give just enough information so that you can catch the fact that that is obviously a humanoid of some sort. And then the background and the colors in the background and that kind of stuff is very easy to achieve. And then you have the feeling that it is a space type thing. And so those, when I talk about doing a complete drawing, that's what is entailed in it, is trying to figure out how it comes together. So here's just a face. And I wanted to learn how to do water droplets. And I don't think I did a very good job, but that was part of it. Like you draw it, and then is this a rain on a glass and a person looking through the glass? Well, maybe, but it's spooky. It's not something you'd ever want to put in your house. Not the kind of people put
Hey,
picture.
I have to go.
Okay.
Okay.
Here's another one with just a dark face. So the idea was to spend the time on the eyes. Eyes are what will always be your focal point when you're drawing just a face or something like that. Here's another idea, like take a look at the eyes. Same idea, the eyes become your focal point. And when it comes to trying to create interest in a face, like here's a real silly drawing and a very quick one, but you can see how you have a face in the background and you have a bird over top of it, and you give just enough information that you can see that. Like none of the eyes, if you took that eye by itself, you wouldn't see the eyes. Even if you took the teeth by itself, it wouldn't take an eye. So a lot of times using the least amount of stuff to create the image, like here's just a study of an eye, and did it in two different effects. And so you just, as you draw stuff, each one you learn something new from. Pick a body part like a lip. Religious symbol, try and draw that and try to draw the angle correctly on it. That's where I started to use the ovals in order to try to get the person in the right position and just even to be able to identify it as a person. And so that's some ideas, you guys, that we can do in the future. This is one that I drew. Spent hours drawing a tiger and then posted it, and someone told me that a tiger has identical markings on it on both sides of the face, and I didn't. And so rather than spend a whole pile of hours fixing it, I just put him in the dark and it hid one side of his face, and then it solved the problem, and then the picture turned out really nice. It wasn't a problem. So then there's a lot of things that I've spent a lot of time on and learning from, that the only way you get better at drawing is by drawing. And so a lot of people come in and want to see step by step. Can you tell me what you're doing? Like this one here, I spent hours, probably over 100 hours on the animal by itself. Hated it. When I was done, I didn't like it. So then I put him in the middle of a snowbank and made him a snow leopard and all that stuff, and I still don't like it. There's something wrong with the eyes. There's something wrong with the hair on them didn't work, and so it has the details. And so that by itself would be a better picture than the actual whole thing. And so I went through the whole thing by the time it was done, and I really didn't like it. And so being the nice thing about drawing is that for me, I'm not trying to make a living at it or anything like that, but you can spend a lot of time. And now that I've got the digital stuff down, I'm starting to learn it. You can take, here's 2 digital drawings put together. It's actually a digital drawing and a scratch board. So the tiger is a scratch board that is huge. It's like the size of the picture up there on the wall. It's that size. And what I did is I took the picture of the tiger and then washed it out using the computer. So I just had the idea of the tiger in the background, and then put it on there. And I think I called this, a friend for lunch. And so just put it in the background. My wife loves blue jays, so she wanted me to draw her blue jay. So I drew the blue jay. Didn't really like the blue jay, but I liked the blue jay when I put the tiger on there trying to eat it. Then I found it interesting, but I didn't find it interesting before that. So I do have a picture of just the blue jay somewhere, but I didn't like it as much. This one here, spend hours trying to draw clouds. And that's, if you're ever going to be an artist, you have to pick certain things and continually push yourself to draw things that you're not comfortable drawing. Well, and because like I had a student in my class who came to me and she could draw the most beautiful horses, but that's all she drew. And so she was an awesome at drawing horses. But when I said, okay, draw flowers, she couldn't draw a flower, but she could draw horses. Like, oh my God, they looked alive. And so the thing that as an artist, what I try to do is I try to pick a topic like waves, clouds, or something like that, and then try to create that effect, and then continually work at it until I get it right. So I've drawn waves. I've drawn so many pictures of waves, and I don't think I have it right yet. And I'll continue to keep drawing them over and over again. So I'll go to landscapes here, and I'll show you the tons of waves I have. We got a whole sections on waves that will go on and on and on. So there's a waves. There's 2 sets of waves. The one on the right, I must have spent 100 hours on it. It turned out, what the heck? Too much white in there. So just, I'm not happy with it, but I continually did waves. Like, here's another set of waves. So what's the heck's that? That doesn't even look like a wave. So I wasn't happy with that one either. And I went, here's another set of waves on the left-hand side. Didn't like those either. And then this is one from Cancun that I got fairly close to what I wanted to do. So those waves looked okay for me. I wasn't too upset with those ones like I was all the other ones. But that's what I mean when I say you have to work through the different layers of it. And so here's more waves. But I didn't like it, so I put a palm tree in front of it and put a little symbol of a Aztec man in there. And here's some other winter and waves, and there's some more waves. Didn't like those ones. And there's another seascape, but no waves in it. Here's just a waves by itself. Looks like a bunch of rocks. Didn't work out at all. Palm trees and waves, palm trees and waves. So I spent like time and time again, like waves, waves. There's the 3 more layers of waves. And again, still not there. The lighthouse with waves on it still didn't work. So when you do that, when you pick a topic, like I'm still not happy with my ability to draw waves. So I'll continually draw on that, and then you get better and better as you do it. So it's just a challenge for you. So you guys are really quiet. Is there anything you want to ask? You guys always this quiet? Oh. So I scare you? If you could draw anything you wanted, what would it be? Okay. If you could draw anything you wanted, what would it be? Cartoon, human?
I can draw human.
If you could draw anything you wanted, what would it be?
I guess flowers.
Flowers? Cool. There's always a single thing that, like, I like drawing wildlife, but wildlife is so time consuming to do properly. It takes so many hours to get the details and all that stuff down. So it's something that when I start one, I know it's going to take me a long time. And I've done probably piles and piles of them, and there's probably 6 that I'm really happy with. And so that's the challenge, that when you approach something like that, I really like the wild, like big cats. I think they're really cool and they're really powerful, but I'm not very good at drawing them. That, like, it takes me a long time to draw one, and I've done very few that I'm thinking, okay, that's really nice. The thing that people always want to do is try and rush through the topic that they're working on and try to get something done quickly, and it takes time. No matter what topic you're working on, it takes time to do it properly. And that's why the digital drawing for me is so much better than doing it by paper, because I can just start whenever I want, and I can do it wherever I want, and don't have to worry about the cleanup, and don't have to worry about the paintbrushes, don't have to worry about any of that kind of stuff. And so this was a real game changer when it came to my ability to continue to do art, because I ended up so busy in the end of my teaching career that I didn't have time to draw, where I could set up a studio and set up the paints and all that other stuff. So it allowed me to actually continue to draw. And so now I've got hundreds and hundreds of paintings, but they're all digital. And people say, well, can you actually have those printed off? Yeah, you can. And you can print them off any size you want. So I've had people who have taken the picture and made it 60 inches by 40 inches. They're huge. And so that's cool. And you never, ever have to worry about selling your original and losing it and never seeing it again, because you can always have another copy of it. You can send it via email to somebody. The other thing that's exciting about digital is you can fix mistakes so much better than you can on watercolor paintings and other paintings. But and I think we are almost done, you guys. We blitzed right through that painting. That painting went faster than. If you're back for the next lesson, come with something that you would like to draw, and we'll all draw something different. And we'll see, like, I'll come with one that I've already started, and I'll be working on my stuff, and then we'll work on a painting together, or a time to draw together. And then you have to be less shy, you guys, and ask the questions and ask for help. And I can actually tell you what's working and what isn't working in your picture. I'll never draw on your page, but I can always help you with angles and light and focal points and all those type of things. And being able to make sure the composition of your picture. Composition is something we haven't even talked about at all, but a composition of a picture is really important. Like, people, there's all sorts of guys that I've taught, and will say, oh, here's a really nice bird, and they'll draw a bird, but it's a bird all by itself. And the idea of art is to be able to put it into a composition. So being able to draw a dragon is really good, but you have to be able to put them into the landscape, or into an environment, or into an activity where it tells a story. Because pictures should always tell the viewer something. And if it's just the object itself, it's okay, that's nice. And that's where the super realistic ones, where they'll take a lifesaver like this and they'll paint that. And they'll paint it so it's so realistic that you look at it and you actually look like you can reach out and grab it. So well, that's super realism, and it's really neat that you can do that, and it's so real. And my God, that takes a lot of talent. That's so cool, and that person's so talented. That's awesome. But what is that picture saying? And pictures don't always have to say something. They should make you feel something, and it should make you feel. They should give you some sort of feeling when you look at it. But you can always, as an artist, you want to tell a story of some sort. And a lot of times people miss that point. They spend so much time working on the craft, they forget that they should be trying to achieve something, some sort of interest layer. And so both you guys should draw figures a lot, eh? Cool. Very cool. I think I'll crop my picture to that size. It looks better than having it as wide as it was and with all the stuff on the outside. Does anybody want a lifesaver? Help yourself. Want a lifesaver?
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And the one thing that we haven't done that we have to do is sign the picture. Okay. Take this. Okay, let's take this one here. Thank you for watching.